We are now going to talk about our last congruence theorem. This one is called the angle-side-angle congruence theorem. If you remember from last time when we talked about side-angle-side, the order of these things is absolutely essential. So this side must be between those two angles. So here's an example picture of when we have enough information. We have this angle right here and this angle right here that are congruent, pairs of angles. And the side right here that's congruent is in between those two angles. So you'll notice that those two angles outline this side and those two angles outline this side. This one is usually abbreviated angle, side, angle. If you know that information, that's enough to be able to tell that these two triangles are congruent. So let's take a look at these two pictures. The question is, do we have enough information? Now here we have an angle that match these two angles and a side, so we do have two angles and a side. You notice that this side is not between those two angles. This is the side that is between. Let's see if we can get some more information though, and we might still have enough. Now, remember that the angles in a triangle, all three of them add up to 180 degrees. And all three of these add up to 180 degrees. Well, if we know that these two are the same and these two are the same, and they all must add up to 180 degrees, then this third angle must be the same. Otherwise, one of these triangles wouldn't end up adding up to 180 degrees with its angles. So that actually gives me the last piece of information that we need. We have this pair of angles that's congruent, this pair of angles that's congruent, and the side now is between those two angles. So this picture we have enough information for angle, side, angle. Yes, we can say these are congruent. Let's take a look at this next one. Again, we do not have enough information yet. Let's see if we can get more information. We have a pair of angles and a side. If we knew that these two angles were congruent right here, we would have enough for angle, side, angle. These two angles are vertical angles, and we know that vertical angles are congruent to each other. So let's add that marking. This is congruent to that, and we now have the angle and the side in between the other angle. So we do have enough information again on this. If I had a picture something like this where I had an angle and a side like that, that would not be enough information, and there's no way to get additional information on that one. So this would be an example where we do not have enough information. So let's take a look at our next picture. We're given some information, and our next task is to be able to state what else we need to know. So here's the information that we're given about these two triangles. Let's add that to the picture. I know that GH is congruent to MN. GH and MN are right there. Angle G is congruent to angle M. So here's angle G, and here is angle M. The question is, what additional piece of information do we need to be able to state that these are congruent? Well, if we're going to use angle, side, angle, we need another angle. We have our first angle and we have our side. Where would be the location of that second angle? Well, that would be down here at the bottom. So we would need to know that these two angles are congruent to each other to outline that side. So we would need to state that angle H is congruent to angle N. And that would be enough information to say that these two triangles are congruent. All right, let's take a look at our last task. We are going to prove that triangle ABK, that's this triangle right here, is congruent to triangle CBJ. That's this triangle right there. Now there's a lot happening in this picture, so I'm going to draw those two separate from each other. So here would be ABK, that's this triangle, and CBJ, and let's add the information that we know. We have that C and A are congruent to each other. So A here and C here are congruent to each other. Awesome. We know that this angle and this angle are congruent to each other, so that's angle K right here. So let's add that. And that's angle J right here, so let's add that. So we have two pairs of angles that we know are congruent to each other. If we knew that this side in between those two was congruent, then we would have enough information. So let's add this last little piece. Now this section is from here to here, where we have that point J that is congruent to this section from here to here where we have the point K. Okay, we have this blank section right here which actually comes from the same line. So right here to here is that portion, and it's also that portion. So this section is congruent to that section because they're really the same line segment. Okay, let's take a look at the picture. We have that these sections right here are congruent, this and this, and these sections are congruent, this and this. Well, when we put them together, that makes two line segments that also must be congruent. So since we have this pair and this pair that are congruent, this whole line segment from J to C is congruent to this whole line segment from A to K. And that gives us enough information to say that these two triangles are congruent. So now we can state that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle, or sorry, not ABC, that's ABK, is congruent to triangle CBJ by the angle side angle congruence theorem. And we are finished. Thank you.